Guess what, people? Guess what, people? College football is back. But even more importantly, we are joined by, I think the official term is multi-hyphenate, Will Masasak. He may not be at, EGOT yet, but he could potentially do it because he's involved in filmmaking, music making, and mirth making, and he knows a buttload about football, like really more than makes any sense. And here's the craziest thing. He'll still plays high-level competitive touch football, despite the fact that I get winded running up the stairs to my apartment. And so I've given up on competitive activities, at least ones that would embarrass me publicly. So Will should be celebrated for many things, but also for his contributions to football, music, and the art of filmmaking.
Well, I thank you, Bill. I would like, with all respect to my football playing brethren on Sunday morning in the Brooklyn Touch Football League, high level is not a phrase I think I would use to describe my play or necessarily the play in that league. But yeah, we have fun. And Brock, there's Brock. You heard the play on music from the other side of the room, and you were like, "Dang, I got to get in."
And he did, and there he is. So, for those that have not yet had the Will Masasak experience, and why haven't you? I'm going to let you know that this is a moment that will change your life forever. And you can thank me later if you can somehow find the words. But I want you to remember this as the waves of Will Masasak wash over you during the show. I want you to remember, one, of course, assume a comfortable position and try to breathe normally. But most importantly, remember that this is, after all, simply the beginning of the show. This is just how we're starting off, people. We're just dipping our toes in college football. So if you, right, at the end of this, you may want to, I don't know, maybe get a Will Masasak tattoo or whatever it is that you do at the end of this. To, of course, try to connect more deeply with the experience that you've had, which, once again, life-changing. But don't leave your fight in the gym. Don't get overwhelmed by it. There's more coming. That's the important thing. So, first of all, Will, since the last time I spoke to you, which was 7 months ago, can that be right?
Oh God, no! It was just before the draft, so I'm gonna call that 5 months ago, maybe.
Oh,
something like that. We had a long conversation on my show about, on some show, on your show, on the Bacapalooza. I think that's really where the last time we connected.
Well, tell us what you've been up to, and then we can start digging into week 0 and prospects.
God, what have I been up to? In terms of football, this part of the preseason, is the part of the preseason where it's all the guys that I know are playing for teams that no one else knows who they are. So it's kind of fun to see. I was watching a little bit of the Colts game. I'm trying to remember who they were playing against, or Cincinnati. So you had Justin Blazak from Wisconsin Platteville making a sack. And I just now tonight on it with Atlanta, saw Casey Washington, one of my big sleeper wide receivers. I think I drafted him in the drafted team event that we do, having a big preseason for camp for Atlanta and this kind of thing. Jason Bean showing out. Yes. So that was my quarterback from the drafted team. So I feel, this is the time of year where I feel vindicated for like 5 days till they all get cut. And then we'll wait to find out if they're going to show up in the UFL or on a practice squad or whatever. But so there's all of that. But otherwise, I'm just enjoying the fact that it's no longer 95 degrees and 90% humidity in New York City, and it feels like football weather. Here we are.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to we'll scold Brock later, but I'm going to bring Brock in to see if he might have any remarks, any questions, any concerns, any things that he would like to express. And what might you want to inquire about? The one, the only Will Masasak, a.k.a. Accidental Zen, AAAK for the deep divers, Steeler Fury.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Well, yes, it has been a long time no see since the fantastic, what was that, 12th annual Macapalooza? Has it been that long already?
No, it was the 10th. It was the 10th annual.
The 58th annual.
Yeah. At this point, who's counting? So jumping into these next slate of games, Florida State lost a tremendous amount of talent last year. And we all know this because we scouted them thoroughly over and over and over again, especially in the defensive back room. Who are some of the players currently for Florida State, especially in that DB room, that you think could be the next great Seminole in the NFL?
Well, you're asking me. They're super deep on just reloading basically from last year, the last couple of years. But I was actually more impressed in a way the returning people that they have on the other side of the ball. Their offensive line, I feel like, is going to be a real strength for them, and it's a good matchup for them against Georgia Tech as far as the defense, because you can't slow start. Georgia Tech can definitely move the football on offense. A lot of running, a lot of option, a lot of quarterback focused play with Haynes King. But Brock, maybe you could tell me more about their defensive backfield, because they lost a couple of really great guys last year. So I'm not really sure who is returning for Florida State.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I have yet to get on my ACC scouting, so I will just transition this to another question. Yeah, I'm so behind. It's honestly concerning. So I will actually transition this to another question. Can you just kind of go over in general some of the prospects that you're looking forward to watching here in week 0, starting, thank goodness, tomorrow? It's been so long without college football. I feel a hole in my stomach has finally been filled.
Will, can I ask you this show you're going to be on next Friday is the next show version of this?
Hopefully, yes. If the Lord lets us live, yes.
Because I say that because I'm gonna throw you a slight curveball, because a Thursday next week, still technically, I guess it's technically a week 1 game, but it's Thursday, so it'll be airing before this show is on again. And I think this is the game of the opening weekend or so of college football, and that would be your North Dakota Bison, excuse me, with
there
North
we
Dakota
go.
State fans. The Bison traveling to Colorado to play the Colorado Buffaloes, and I think this is a really scary game for Colorado, and I think they think so too, because they're sort of freaking out there. Deion Sanders is talking about he's not going to take questions from 2 different members of the press that he's having a war with. And, they seem to be, I don't know. I feel like that kind of tension tells me that they're a little bit worried about this opening game. If you saw the rankings from the Athletic, North Dakota State was actually ranked higher than the Colorado Buffaloes in the Athletic rankings. And I think they very well may beat Colorado, despite the presence of players, like you said, to take it back to your original question. Shedeur Sanders, of course, who's at least in the running to be a first-round quarterback, maybe even the first quarterback selected. And of course, his 2A cohort, Travis Hunter,
yep,
who plays obviously offense and theoretically, Colorado's skill players should be able to do a lot of stuff in this game because they're a little bit better, more higher talent level with the skill positions. But the offensive and defensive lines, I think I might take North Dakota State. Wondering if either you guys are I don't know. This is something like I feel like it's a pretty exciting matchup. It could go either way.
Yeah, there is no might about the offensive and defensive lines. There's lots of sort of stereotypical things people say about various types of grains and various types of people that maybe have either harvested or eaten those types of grains in their lives. But despite the fact that it's a bit of a stereotype, stereotypes are usually rooted at least a little bit in truth. These are large people who can sometimes trace their bloodlines literally to Vikings in some cases, who have found their way to the Dakotas.
That's can I, by the way.
Yes, exactly. Who have found their ways to the Dakotas, in some cases intentionally, I should point out, and have stayed there. And so these people who are used to a challenging way of life. I mean, obviously it's not as challenging now, say, as it was 100 years ago, but some of them have been in the Dakotas for 150, 180 years. Their bloodlines stretch back quite some time. And then they left from, once again, places where people had once been Vikings. So you combine that with physical farm life and towns where there's not an overabundance of things to do that aren't either school, work, or sports. And you often will find these people, when they get a chance to, what's the word I'm looking for, embarrass some city folk, will take advantage of said chance. And I can point to a few examples. There's a reason that Minnesota has removed North Dakota State, I believe, from their schedule, because it didn't work out so well for them. So there's a lot. It's not just Colorado. There are a lot of, even in the Power 4.2, there are a fair number of programs that would lose the upfront battle to North Dakota State. When you get super bored, or if you get super bored, look at Wake Forest, like offensive and defensive line. Just stack them up, like physically, next to the guys from North Dakota State. And you tell me which one should be in, the FBS, just looking at the size and, I guess, accomplishment and brutal violence, frankly, that one can bring to bear versus the other one. So you are not wrong for saying, oh, when I look at the offensive line, I look at the defensive line. Yes, that's not just an even battle. I believe that there is a noticeable tilt towards North Dakota State. What do you say,
by the way, the North Dakota State just, seems to be putting offensive linemen in the league at a very regular pace over the last 10 years or so. Looking back, Joe Haig, Dylan Radnaz, Cordell Voice, and Cody Mock was the most recent one. And there's a guy there this year, Gray Zabel, who's probably their next cat coming. But it's just sort of like, that team and that conference, that level of football is producing a lot of offensive linemen right now.
Oh, yeah, they figured something out, clearly. Ladies and gentlemen, every once in a while, Bill has a special little surprise for you, right? I let you know that you were going to get to experience and be, frankly, dipped in the Wil Massasack essence. However, what I did not let you know, at least not on the front end, because every once in a while I like to spring a little surprise on you, you're going to also get an infusion, a transfusion, if you will, of blue blood directly into your football veins. That's right, people. Zach McKinnell is here to set you straight. Are you perhaps, in the words of someone who was on the show earlier, concerned about how far behind you are in some of your scouting? Guess what? I may not get you something for Christmas. I might even mail you a card, but I got you a gift tonight. Right down here, I got you Zach McKinnell. He's going to fix you. You're going to walk away saying, oh, I feel like I went to a seminar. I feel like I went to a TED Talk. I feel like I got a straight up small school football brain transplant. You don't have to thank me. This look on your face is enough. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, ships at sea, everyone, grab your butts. It's Zach McKinnell. Zach, thank you so much. It has been like half a year, probably, maybe more.
Yeah.
Yikes.
It's been a little while.
Been a little while. First of all,
I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you. First of all, you win the background battle. Look at that. It's very soothing.
Pretty impressive.
Blue bloods in the back, and you put on your ASMR voice and everything for us. So,
I try, man.
And he also wins the facial hair battle.
Oh yeah.
It's not even a competition at this point.
Right. It really isn't. Brock has got a little chin dirt going, and then I have gone a little, ashy down here, right? A little bit of looks like something burned on my face, and then Wil has gone clean shaven, which is very much. It makes, once again, it enforces a little bit of that Bolitnikov flavor.
It's all about the speed, Bill. All about the speed,
All about speed. Right. Because you can be more aerodynamic. So I'm going to ask Zach a quick kickoff question. First of all, You and Blue Bloods, my friend, have been flat out killing it. Woo! It's like I knew you win. Now you're big balling, you're Rolex wearing, G5 riding, Kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing, son of a gun. Look at you.
Nah, man. Hey, I got to give a shout out to the team, man. Coach Fred. I mean, to have an active assistant head coach that puts in the time and the effort to be on the show every week. Got a new contributor, Timothy Rosario, man, and he's just like a statistics freak, man. But man, as always, I appreciate you inviting me to the show, man. And that intro was worth the price of me being on the show, man. I mean, that goes down in the history of the best intros I've ever had as a guest on the show. So I appreciate you, man.
Oh, it's the least I can do, man. I know I've said this before. It is a gift to have you on. And when I met you, I said, how is he doing it? I won't go into the life you were somehow leading at the time, but I didn't complain about my life for a good 7-8 months straight. When I thought about what Zach McKinnon was somehow doing, it's like, yeah, it could be worse. I could be Zach. I don't know how in the heck you did it, man. I don't know you did, but you did it. You came through it. And now, boom, 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 more money, more money, more money. And now people all over America know your name. And guess what? They should, because you are the business. So I'm about to ask you a couple of little questions. The East West 1000, I think it is, came out, which, first of all, shout out to people who I thought I was doing something, getting up to say 450 sometimes. Yikes. I feel like I need to get my weight up. But first of all, shout out just to anybody who managed to grade 1,000 or at least watch 1,000 players. 2, do you feel like there was enough representation of non-FBS players? I feel like, and shout out to my friend Eric Galco, I feel like they've done a really good job, especially the last couple of years, of being, to use I guess it's become a hot button word, but to be inclusive. And then we'll talk about the season and, of course, obviously, the first few games that feature some non-FBS teams. But how do you feel about the list?
I mean, like right here, 63 players from the FCS made it, which I think is a fair amount. Now, I really don't put a lot of stock into how many were on the watch list, to be honest with you. I put more stock into how many players were invited. Because if you remember, there were, over probably 40 to 50 FCS players on the Senior Bowl watch list last year, and we got like 4 invites, and 2 of them were late because people got hurt. So I learned to stop really caring who's on the watch list. But I will say, I just think it's about getting representation on the scouting board that they use for both bowl games. Now, one of our contributors for the site, Gerald Huggins, is one of the national scouts for the East West Shrine Bowl. He does a great work for the site for us, man. Shout out to my guy Gerald, just got hired on at Morgan State as director of player personnel over there, man. So shout out to Gerald. But I think it was good. Now, I will say this: when you kind of start breaking it down, it's tough to say, because let's just be honest, the best conferences are going to have the most players. And you look at like the Missouri Valley had almost 20 players.
Yep.
I think represented for that conference. The Big Sky in double digits. CAA. I think the CAA is so interesting, man. They had 15 players on this list, and there's been a lot of talk about the CAA declining, given the fact that Delaware is leaving, James Madison left recently, Richmond's leaving next year to go to the Patriot League. But you look at, in terms of individual talent, maybe not on the field results as a team, that conference may be the most talented conference in FCS football. And just in terms of individual talent that they're putting out every year, especially at like edge rusher and offensive line, it just seems like the CAA has so much potential. I will say 2 guys I was really excited to see getting recognition, because I've been really high on these guys for like 3 or 4 years now. Charles Grant at William and Mary on the offensive line. I think he is going to be a guy you see emerge late in the process, and I think he can work his way up to being a day 2 pick. I'm that high on him. And then Ice Waxer from Villanova at corner. I think we were the only publication to give him All-American honors last year. And now coming into this year was first team All-Conference on almost every All-American list. So I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that Ice Waxer is the real deal. But I'm just hoping these guys go out and ball, and we get, 15, 16 guys, maybe 20 guys to the East West Shrine Bowl. And if we can get up somewhere around 7 to 10 to the Senior Bowl, man, I'll be happy. But as with the transfer portal, I think what you're going to see is to get to those numbers, we're going to have to include some guys who may have transferred up to the next level to get somewhere in that number for FCS representation.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out a guy who I think has a shot, and of course he was at one point with Jared Burst and the late AJ Simon in Albany, and that's Anton Yunkash, who I occasionally mention brutal violence, and though the game is changing and more about space and this and that and the other thing, when you see a guy who's really all he wants to do is get his hands on you and throw you to the ground, it sort of reminds you of what the game used to be like. And Mr. Yunkash, is he the bendiest? Is he the most flexible? Is he the longest? No. But he's dented some people's breastplates. He has straight up dented some people's breastplates. He gets hands on people and they go back, like John Wick, unloaded on him. It is something to watch that guy go. I am probably higher on him than I should be, Zach, but he's now at Arkansas. And I'll still watch him. It'll be bittersweet because I was hoping he would stay at Albany and then force them to invite him to the Senior Bowl by going for like 17 and a half sacks or something, because he was going to go crazy nuts this year. And he still probably will put up good numbers no matter where he goes, because one thing that travels is shock in your hands. Like, I don't care who you're up against, because I saw him put 310-pound dudes on their heels consistently when he was, and the guys aren't that much bigger. They might be a little bigger, but not that much bigger. 322 and 311 or whatever, not that big a difference if you've got hands like his.
That's Matt Judon, Bill, right?
Well, I watched him at Grand Valley State, and there were all these questions about Judon, even like, well, yeah, he's putting up crazy numbers now, but and of course, Matt was a very different kind of player, right? He is what you think you want when you look for a pass rusher. Oh yeah, he's 6'4" 3/4. He's got 33 7/8 inch arms. He can jump 36.5 inches. Like, that's what you think you want. Anton's going to have to just win people over, right? Because he doesn't look the part. But once again, we watched what Brandon Fisk did, right? Now, obviously, he's a big school. Well, he ended up in a big school, I should probably way to put it. Well, I guess now he has to. I guess it's sort of a similar path. But he also didn't quite look like what you really wanted. He was a weird little tweener body. Well, not little. Let me rephrase that. Well, little if you think he's a D tackle, a traditional D tackle. But now the game is once again changed. You move everyone around anyway. Okay, so is it just me, or is this FBS defensive back, both nickels, safeties, and corners, as a group, one of the deepest, at least in the last, say, 6-7 years? Or am I once again perhaps losing all of my sanity? Or it could be a combination. But Zach, what do you think?
I mean, I think there's an argument, especially grouping everything together. I think the FCS class is going to be pretty good. I mentioned ICE. You have the kid in North Dakota State. Was it Cole Wisniewski, who might miss the Colorado game? Sadly, I was really looking forward to watching that film. At safety, I think McDaniel at Jackson State now, former Alcorn corner, and then a guy who us at FCS Football Central have been really high on, Saku White at Lafayette.
Yes,
I think that kid could be an athletic freak if he puts it all together. So I think it's. And we also got Kendall Bowler. We can't forget Kendall Bowler. You got
freaks on the literal freak list.
Yeah, and then you got the kid at A&T, Karan Prunty,
I'm a huge fan of him.
All-American at Kansas and had to take a few years off of school. Came back at A&T. He's been an all-conference selection multiple times over there. So I think I don't think you're crazy, man. And I think even at the FBS level, man, there's some guys who really could shine. I mean, I think the obvious one, we all agree that Travis Hunter is probably going to be a really, really high draft pick. And, he could be a wide receiver too. I personally think Travis is a little bit better at wide receiver than I think he's going to be at corner at the next level, just based on the film I've seen. But there was the kid at Michigan is just next level, in my opinion. Like Will, I think it's Will Johnson is just. I don't see a corner in college football that should be drafted above him. that kid has the entire package from the film I've seen of him. So I think he headlines the class, and I think overall you're just seeing that these guys are finding just ridiculous athletes, and they're being developed at a high level. So I'm with you, man. I think the DB class is going to be loaded, and I think this year the offensive line class is another one that by the end of the year we're gonna have to have a real conversation about some of the top talent for offensive linemen. I mean, you got the kid at Texas and Kelvin Banks. You got the kid at LSU, was it Will Campbell?
Yes, sir.
That I really like. So I think offensive line is right there behind the DBs this year, man.
Hey, Bill, can I quickly throw in a below FCS defensive back that I think we should be talking about?
Go for it, Will.
Tanner Volk from Central Washington, the Central Washington Wildcats, I might add. So Volk is a safety, had 13 picks last year. And at first you're like, well, he's a center fielder at a level where guys throw it up for, with a prayer. But he actually also, looks great in man coverage, plays, downhill against the run. And actually, it's a little shocking to me that he still remains a D2, except for, they have a good team. I guess that's one of those things. It's just easier to stay at some point. But I know he got a Senior Bowl invite, and I suspect that he's someone that might find his way there. I sure hope so, because we were mentioning about the invites before. I feel like not enough. I mean, we can be happy that a certain amount of invites go out, but the real problem is if you don't get a preseason invite for something like Senior Bowl or East West, then it's really hard to get there, right? So the fact that he did get some recognition, I think, opens the path for him, because as we all know, these small school guys, if you don't have the path like that, your chances of making your way even onto a team in camp are pretty small. So it's very great that he's getting some recognition. I really like his game, not just the interceptions, but I think he looks like he should be, could be successful at higher levels of football.
Well, the cool thing about Volk, you mentioned center fielder, and I think he also was a terrific baseball player. I remember you said it correctly, but football intelligence is something that gets mentioned a lot. But I'm not saying he's young Ed Reed or something, but he could be a little Weddle-ish, to mention another Ravens, well, at some points Ravens safety. He diagnoses things quickly. He comes down like he's shot out of a pick something, howitzer, cannon, laser, whatever it is. He comes down really quickly. He's almost never wrong when he decides to go. Everybody got occasionally, but he's right a good, 92% of the time when he decides to go. When he comes down, he brings it, and he's 186, 187. He's not huge, but he hits, and that's what I'm old, so I still appreciate safeties that can bring it, and I know that's kind of fallen out of favor, but I like the fact that he stiffens, like he'll even bigger guys. He'll stand them straight up, put them on their backs, and here's some other. You mentioned Saku, who I'm a huge fan. I'm so happy that you like him too. Once again, super off the charts, high level football IQ. Can play probably 3 positions in the second. At least right. He can legitimately play. Nickel at a high level, corner at a high level, free safety at a high level, and maybe even a strong safety as a fairly high level. So I think if he tests well, he's still probably going to go day 3 just because of the whole level of competition thing that people always bring up. But I could see him going fairly, mid to early day 3 if he really has a great day of testing. And once again, gets to the right all-star game situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. His top speed is what I'm concerned about. I don't know what, sometimes you can tell 4.3, 4.4 on film. Let's just be honest. You could tell when a guy has that type of speed. I don't know if Saku has that. So I think that probably caps him at corner. I think he's going to make a living at nickel, but if he can keep it somewhere in the low 4.5s, I think I agree with you that day 3 is probably where you're going to see him fall.
Yeah, for me, the target number is 4.53. I think if he's 4.53 or under, he's definitely getting drafted. I think you get into the 4.57s, 4.58s, it gets a little dicey, and obviously anything above that, and he's getting invited to a camp or probably to a draft free agent. I've been dropping some of my favorite prospects in little videos, one on offense and one on defense. And when I got to Saku White, I was like, I wish I could do it more than once, like he's one of those players that you revisit. I've noticed that Robert McDaniel went from being kind of a fringe guy this time last year to now even big draft, as they call it, has now gotten onto him. Do you think it's simply the game he had, ironically, against Jackson State, and the move inside? Because obviously he was a traditional outside corner previously, and now people realize he's more of a move around nickel, whatever you want to call what Tyrann Mathieu does. People have realized he's more that than he is a true outside corner. Do you think that's the reason for his recent rise, or is there more to it than that, Zach?
Okay, so he's an interesting prospect for me. Now, our guy Gerald, very high on him, and he's kind of swayed me a little bit on this.
The highest, in fact.
Yes, the highest. I think it's his size is really what's giving the hype, because, I mean, he's a legit 6'2", 215. He's going to be a big defensive back. And I also think he, like you said, he kind of played out of position at Alcorn at times, where I think by necessity they had to put him in certain positions that might not have fit his skill set. At Jackson, he's going to start and probably play exclusively the nickel, if I had to imagine. Yep. And I think that's going to help his draft stock, because I think that's where he projects. I just don't know if he has the high-end athleticism to be an NFL corner. Now, can he cover? Yeah, but I don't think he's that. I don't think he's fast enough, and I just don't think he's athletic enough to be a true outside corner at the next level. But anytime you got a guy who's 6'2", 215 with the production and can play probably, just like you said with Saku, both safety spots and the nickel spot, and possibly could even drop down into the box into like a hybrid linebacker type of role. I think his versatility and size is really what's driving the hype for him. And this year is crucial, because I think, Bill, he's one of those prospects that's teetering a little bit. And by teetering, I don't mean that he might not live up to the hype, but if he doesn't have a good year, the train stops. Because I think the verdict's still out on how good of a prospect he can be. So I think this year at Jackson is so crucial for Robert McDaniel if he really wants to get an opportunity at the next level.
Yeah, I believe, if Mary says correctly, that Gerald, who I have enormous, giant respect for, has him as his number one overall HBCU prospect.
Yeah, I believe so.
Which is, and once again, he's my number 12, so it's not like I don't like him, but I would be honest, I was a little flabbergasted. It's like he had several good, solid games and one great game. And once again, this is where my age shows through. I need to see you do it like 6-7 times before I'm ready to push you in my top 10 or top 5, and certainly nowhere near my number 1. But
usually it's sorry, Bill.
Go ahead, Will.
Just gonna say, usually I feel like it's the other way. Like, you can't do anything wrong. You can't have a bad game. You can't have a bad stretch. Your team can't have a losing season. Like you have to hit all the marks, and there's very little margin for error. Yes, we would like to see them do it in many games, but I feel like it's more important that they don't have bad tape, or that they don't have like I said, you get totally lost if you're on a bad team, even if you're a good player. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, luckily he's not on a bad team. In fact, I'm assuming that's part of why he transferred to Jackson State. And not that Alcorn's bad either, but I think he knew that it's a more high-profile program with a little more in terms of resources. I have one more Zach-specific question, and then I'll open it up to, a free-for-all. The other position that I ended up sort of getting stuck on when I was looking at FCS players, and then particularly HBCU players, is the pass rushers. Obviously, Finn Claypool has been discovered by Big Draft, whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, I've heard, the big names begin to discuss Finn Claypool, but I think he's just one of many. I think there's a good 6, 7, maybe 8 FBS pass rushers that could go in the first 200 picks, in my opinion. Now, it probably won't happen simply because of the math that happens with players that didn't go to the FBS, but guys that have the qualities that I see in a top 200 player, I'll put it that way, they have it. And obviously losing a guy like Anton, took one off the board, and there's like Terrell Allen, transferring, took another one off the board, but there's still some left. So take me through the whatever you want to call them, the guys who smack quarterbacks around from whatever alignment, whether it be interior, exterior, standing up, whatever. Once again, am I too high on the class? And who are some of the guys that you've begun to focus on?
Little surprised to hear how many you said in the top 200 picks. I'll be honest, from FCS, just because I think there's a lot of good edge rushers. I just don't. There's maybe only one or two that I think have the measurables to sneak in there, unless they just have a ridiculous pro day or combine or go to the Senior Bowl East West Shrine. But my number one overall FCS prospect is at the edge spot. I think is David Walker. Yep. And every time, every single player on the field. And Central Arkansas has talent. It's not like he plays on a bad team or anything. So he just shines. And I think if you put him on, you could put him on any team in the country. And I think he's good enough to go play at the P5 level, the G5 level. It doesn't matter. This kid dominated at D2, has dominated 2 years at Central Arkansas. And I think he might break through and be the Buck Buchanan Award winner this season. Every single game he's producing, every single season he's produced double-digit tackles for loss, double-digit sacks at times. So I think David Walker's the guy. Another guy I really like is Elijah Williams at Morgan State.
Yep.
Same type of thing. The problem with Elijah is I'm interested to see if his actual measurables are, how FCS is, man. Sometimes a guy will be listed as 6'4", really like 6'1.5", and you never could be sure. And film is sometimes hard unless you see him in person. I haven't had a chance to watch Elijah in person, but if he actually measures in at 6'2", 285, man, I don't see why he wouldn't be drafted, because if you're looking for production, he has it. If you're looking for violent hands, he has it. He can rush to quarterback. He can play outside as a stand-up edge. He can come down and play like a true 5 defensive end. He can probably play the 3 really and truly if you wanted to really bring him inside. He can do it all. And so I think Elijah Williams has some versatility. Also like Elijah Ponder at Cal Poly. I think,
really like him.
Yeah. Yes. You talk about a guy who is hurt because his team sucks. That whole program is atrocious, and he's like the lone bright spot in a room full of darkness. And so I kind of wish he would have hit the portal. I know that sounds bad, but I would have really liked Elijah not even to leave the FCS, just go play for a contender. Go play at Montana State, or North Dakota State, something like that. Could you imagine him on that stage? He would be wreaking havoc. And one other guy I really like, I don't know how much shine he's going to get, but Josiah Silver at New Hampshire, who is a guy who I think had a bad year. Okay, let me rephrase this. He didn't have a bad year because he was a first-team all-conference selection, but he had a bad year in terms of his production. But you're looking at a guy with almost 50 tackles for loss, almost 30 sacks and 8 forced fumbles, 3-time all-conference, 2-time All-American, was a freshman All-American, finished second for the Freshman of the Year Jerry Rice Award as a defensive end. This kid can do it all, and I just think he's a bona fide pass rusher that you cannot teach what he can bring off the edge. The one question I have about Josiah, though, is his size. Like I said, is he really going to measure in at what they are listing him as? If he does that, I think he's athletic enough to possibly work his way into this conversation.
Last official measurement for Josiah Silver, 6'10", 247.
If he comes in at that, I think that's still okay.
Yeah, I think he's right there.
Yeah, he's right on the edge. And I don't know if it's too early to throw out, futures bets on what a guy will measure in, but if I had to guess, you were saying 6'2", 285. My guess is 6'1" 3/8", 268. So if you could write that down, whatever it is, I don't think he comes at 6'2", 285, but I think 6'1", 3/8", 268.
I talked to his defensive coordinator, Anton Sewell, at the Shrine Bowl last year. He's coaches are usually honest, especially, off the record type stuff. He said he's actually 285.
Really?
And if he is playing that athletic at 285, then but then we're going to have a conversation about him.
He's getting drafted.
I mean, and another honorable mention, even though I don't think this guy kind of plays an edge rusher role, but I don't think he's big enough to play it at the next level, is Amir Abdullah at Illinois State.
Right.
A freak off the edge. And you see this in the FCS, Bill, you know this.
Freak list. Yeah, he's one
of the guys actually on the freak list, but you see this all the time, all of you guys at the FCS level. Smaller, faster guys thrive at edge rusher because the offensive tackles aren't athletic enough to block them. So they put up these, you look at like an Isaiah Land, something like that, completely undersized for the next level, but they shine. But I think his last measurement that I have here is 6 foot, like 215, 220. Yeah, that's not going to get it done at edge rusher at the next level. So I think he moves to off-ball linebacker potentially, and maybe steps back down for pass rushing downs. But I think Amir Abdullah is legit, man. I think you're going to see him on some of these lists and possibly get an invite if he. And I think Illinois State's a sleeper this year. If Illinois State makes a run to the playoffs, man, number 22 is going to be a massive reason for that.
Yeah. So far, you've made me feel mostly smart, except maybe I'm a little too high on some of the pass rushers in the FCS class this year. I'm a little.
Well, he's made me feel like I should sign off for the night. That like you guys got it all covered. I got my. I'll come. What do they call me? I'm a finisher. I'm a closer. So
you really are. You are that.
The last couple of months of the season, I'll have it down cold, but it's interesting now.
You have that Sebastian Coe. You have that Abib Bakila finishing.
I got the big kick. It's true. But I actually was intrigued by something that I know that you mentioned in the pre-show, and it was also mentioned in this, the last part of this conversation, and that's the transfer portal's effect on things. And I know we're, when we say small school these days, we're focused on FCS and maybe even the occasional D3 or D2 guy, but I feel like the division of football that's been most affected by the transfer portal is actually FCS, because I feel like guys who were high up, the cream of the crop of FCS got a chance to transfer up, and the guys who were sort of not lingering in FCS but didn't really have an opportunity transferred down, not FCS rather, but the non-power 4.2
group of 5. Yep,
that's what I'm trying to say. Those schools, the group of however many it is now, that they went both ways. Their best players went up, their depth players went down, and so I feel like if anything now there's going to be more sleepers at that level, and I feel like the draft is starting to reflect that there's just more and more guys being drafted from power teams, and then the sleepers are like guys at FCS. So I'm just curious how you guys felt about this year's, particularly the transfers. I felt like that was really winnowed out those group of 5 teams.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was about to say there's this massive shift in the FCS media and fan base that I've been trying to fight against the best I can. I don't think we're the most affected at all. Because if you look at the trends of the draft, FCS historically has kind of stayed the same over the past 15 years. We really haven't seen, now take out what was it, the COVID cycle? If we remove those data points, we've actually kind of gotten a little bit better. Slightly. But if you look at G5, their numbers are tanking right now in terms of draft prospects. And like you said, it's because, and also think it's this, and one thing that I think we can expand on is P5 or P4 now programs, they're more skeptical of FCS transfers because they haven't played they don't look at it as D1 football, but they haven't played on the top FBS level and all that. So they're a little bit more skeptical to take those guys. G5 players, they are not afraid to take. And so I actually think it's worse for the G5 programs because if they have a breakout player, 95% chance that player's playing at Michigan or Alabama or Georgia or somewhere. But at the FCS level, you still see some of these breakout guys get overlooked because some of these FBS programs question if it translates to the FBS level. And so I actually think it kind of helps us to have that break because some of our best players get overlooked because of the question of competition by FBS programs, as dumb as it may sound. Because I would say that if you take the top 25 FCS programs and the top 25 G5 programs, I think the FCS has a winning percentage in those head-to-head matchups.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the lesson is, if you're Georgia State, if you're Northern Illinois, if you're South Alabama, start benching your good players halfway through a game.
Yeah, right.
It's time to hide your light under a bushel.
You laugh, but it's been ugly. I mean, and some of their other reasons, it's not just transfer portal, but like Coastal Carolina went from a team that was ranked in the top 20 or whatever to I don't even know what they have this year. Or they have anything? Like if last one out, turn the lights out.
Admittedly, they're not what they were. You're right. But I want to defend that program. They've also done a good job of working the portal in the other direction. Yeah. They've gotten some good guys in. So
that's good. I'm glad to hear that because I was a little worried about once things were, shifting for them.
They lost some of the maybe bigger name guys, but they've gained some. Mark my words, the Chanticleers will be a very competitive, tough program. Maybe not 10 wins, but
my point really was I think we're going to look at prospects in the group of 5 who are going to end up being not even they won't even be sleepers in the spring, but they'll be players that in the summertime this time next year that we're going to bounce around some names and say, this guy, like, where did he come from? Nobody heard of him. He wasn't necessarily drafted, or if he was drafted late. They're going to come from those schools. I think there's a lot of really talented guys at that level, but I'm not sure how many good teams they're going to be. Like I think I would give North Dakota State a better chance to beat a Power 4 team than half the teams in Group of 5.
Yeah.
I'm going to let Brock, because I've been sort of dominating. Brock, what questions do you have for either one or both of our guests about week 0, about the deep dive? Yes, finally into non-FBS football, which of course is something I've been so thirsty for, and or as you said, like those sleeper prospects that are coming from, even if not quote unquote small school programs, but non-power 4.2 programs.
Well, right now in week 0, the bookies have Montana State as a 13.5-point favorite on the road at New Mexico. So I wanted to jump into that game. Yeah,
the bookies have never seen New Mexico play football, is my guess. I mean,
perhaps. That is disturbing. 13.5.
I mean, Brock, here's the thing. Montana State's a really good team who returns. They have basically their offensive line from 2022 when they had actually better offensive line than last year. They have Tommy Mellott still, who's an excellent college quarterback. I'm not sure, if he's really a pro prospect, but he might be one of those cats who switches positions and plays in the pros. He's got a lot of talent. But New Mexico is like, new coach, defensive issues. They have a couple of guys on the defensive line that can play, but they're not really good on defense. I have a feeling that this is a game where both teams will be able to run the ball a little bit, but Montana State is just, they're going to know what to do in crunch time. They got a quarterback that can make the plays, and New Mexico might have a bright future, but I feel like this is really being overlooked. And I'll bet you the reason is Montana State, when they have played a really good Power 5 team or bigger team, have lost outrageously. But, New Mexico is not exactly a football power. But, Bronco Mendenhall might, turn them into something someday. He's a decent football coach, but give me that running attack of Montana State and their just ability to win tough games. I think they're a contender in the FCS this year, and I think they're going to show it week 0.
Has there been a stranger coaching career arc than Bronco Mendenhall's? I'm trying to think of somebody. I mean, like, it's, if you would explain to somebody, there's a term we use in the Black community called hustling backwards. And for those who may not be familiar with it, but Bronco Mendenhall is one of those people that seems to have embraced it, right? I remember not that long ago that he was like a hot name for the biggest jobs in college football. I mean, biggest. I mean, as big as they get, right? Name a job, right? Texas A&M. I mean, as big as jobs get. Florida State, USC. Like, his name was being mentioned. And it seemed like he was like, nah, I'm good. And then when he gets a chance to coach UVA, he's like, yeah, give me all that. And then his next move, his next like chess maneuver is to find his way to New Mexico State. And I'm thinking to myself, like, maybe he's playing like some kind of 3D chess that I'm not capable of seeing. Maybe he's operating on a level my poor brain can't understand. But I've never seen an intentional, because it seems like he's been just making these decisions. It's not like people are like, "Oh, you suck, get out of here." It's like he's intentionally doing these things.
So, do you think he'll be the next coach at UMass? Is that what you're trying to say?
They will have
like
to
he's trying to
Don
complete
Brown's cold, dead hands from the desk at UMass in order for Mendenhall to get that job.
I think mostly he's been getting hired based on his name, honestly, for probably his entire career. He just has that is a damn good football name. I got to give him that.
It is a great football name. It's just, I just can't remember someone's career. Like, there've been times when something's happened. Somebody's had a health concern, or, something's happened where they've had some life-changing event and they had to sort of build back up. But that's not what's happening, right? I mean, it's not like Coach Anderson, who I think his wife passed away from cancer, or Jerry Kill, right, where he himself had to finally figure out the right medicine to deal with his health situation. As far as I know, he's very healthy. I don't know, whatever. I didn't mean to go down this rabbit hole. It just fascinates me when I think about his career, and and as far as I can tell, like, no one's making him do it. But whatever. Here we are. So let's talk about some of the FBS on FBS crime, or whatever we'll see take place. Brock brought up one of them, but I'll open up to either Will or Zach. Does anybody have a favorite FBS versus FCS game of the weekend, and why?
Of this weekend?
Yeah, or heck, I'll cheat and let you include the next one as well, since you won't be here.
I'm about to say, I think we only have two this week, so it was either pay the pay-per-view to watch Delaware State Hawaii, which I don't think many of us are doing at midnight.
So
We are not even
football
that.
degeneracy does have a bottom. Is that what you're
I
telling
draw
me?
the line somewhere. Paper
wanna-
Hawaii is the line.
Just
Yeah,
want to
especially-
add for all you sickos, you can actually get it for free on your phone. Team One Sports app. Download that. You don't have to pay the pay-per-view. Just want to let you know.
At midnight Eastern time.
It's run and shoot. Come on, live a little.
That's crazy. That's just a madness
Delaware
kickoff.
State had to send their team in sections because they missed their flight. What gets better than that? That's what I'm talking about.
For those who don't already know this, there's an actual Twitter X whatever account called Sickos Committee, and if they have not highlighted this game as their game of the week, they have completely fallen off the job. Shout out to the Sickos Committee. Please, someone do a feature on that game. And thank you, Brock, for I don't know if you have a sponsorship deal or whatever, but if so, let me wet my beak. But we are always happy to let people know how they can watch more college football, because everything's better when you're watching more college football, even if it is the game that even Zach McKinnell apparently has turned down. So I realized there is a bottom. It's not a bottomless pit of football for Zach. He immediately said, "Nope, thanks, nope, I'm good."
I'll watch the replay of Montana State instead. I think in terms of FCS, FBS next week, I know the obvious choice. Everyone wants to talk North Dakota State, Colorado, but I think the bigger game is actually Jackson State, Louisiana Monroe, which is also on Thursday night. I think it kicks off at the exact same time next week. It's been since, I think, 1985 since the last time a SWAC team has beaten an FBS school, and that's when Grambling State beat Oregon State way back in the day. I wasn't even born yet, so long time ago. And I think when I look at Jackson, I understand the skepticism maybe around their defense. I still think their secondary is going to be much improved. I think their interior defensive line is going to be better. Linebackers a question mark, but they still got Jacoby and Morgan at quarterback. Irv Mulligan in an extremely deep running back room. Wide receiver is going to be just fine with Fabian McCray, Rico Powers, and those guys coming back. And ULM might be the worst team at the FBS level next year. I mean, they're going to be absolutely atrocious. I think Jackson finds a way to get it done. And I think looking at the roster right now, Jackson might have the better roster than ULM. And I've said this if you put ULM in the FCS, I don't think they make the playoffs. That's just how bad I think that team's going to be, man. So I think Jackson has a chance to really make history this weekend, or next week, or next Thursday, and beat the first FBS team for the SWAC since 1985.
I like it.
That's a great one.
Zach McKinnell, people, if you aren't following him, what are you doing with your lives? What? Seriously. I mean, if you want to step away from like whatever viewing device and then go quickly pull him up on Twitter and follow him and then come back, that's fine. We can actually pause the show for just a moment. And then when you're done, we'll pick back up again. But you have to follow him. What the heck are you doing? Okay, so.
I followed him during the show, Bill.
Oh, even better. In fact, stay where you are, pick up your phone, view on some other device. Yeah, get a tablet or whatever. Grab your kid's phone. But what are they doing with it? Just, snap facing and face chatting?
Snap face.
Wow, Bill, that was... I love you to death, but you are old. Holy
I know. I'm very, very old. I channeled a little bit of Bill Belichick in that last moment. But the point is that I am obviously very excited about the return of college football. And I hope you're right, first of all, Zach. And I want to not defend Louisiana Monroe because that's not really possible. But I do want to say I believe it will be a very competitive game, and I believe they will improve as the season goes on. They have some unproven players, some who are, regular freshmen or whatever, who, came up through there, and some who came in from, McNeese, the usual sort of, we just talked about it, the whole, of modern college football, where even Colorado obviously sort of pioneered it, where they literally flipped the roster almost entirely in 1 year. And we won't see it quite that dramatically anywhere, but you do see 40-something% turnover at some programs where, as the old saying, look to the left, look to the right. Well, those guys won't be here. And it's turned out to be true. And once again, especially group of 5 programs. And of course, say it with me, everybody, ULM is in the group of whatever. Solve for X. But in their, not defense, but I do believe the plucky Monrovians by the end of the year will be
the Monrovians.
Better than UMass?
God, I hope they play each other. That would be awesome. Okay, Sickos Committee, get on it. See if you can get it going.
Better than me.
But the Warhawks, I believe that will be a visibly better team by week 10 than they are week 0. That's what I'll say. I feel like they've some young or unproven players that will turn out to be better than the players they end up beating out for certain positions, because they've got some people. Their depth chart also doesn't make sense to me in some places. Like, they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out, and it'll get better by comparison. So I'm going to now.
Wow. The greatest side of confidence from Bill Carroll. They will figure it out.
One thing I really didn't expect tonight was that we would be getting the defense of Louisiana Monroe. That should be in the headline for the show.
I didn't intend it either, Will, and I didn't think it was going to happen. And I want to make it clear that my somewhat tepid support for Louisiana Monroe is measured because they're not a good program. I'm not disagreeing with that. But I do believe-ish, what's the old thing that Rich Eisen, higher register? I do believe-ish that you'll see some of their unproven and younger players emerge and push their way past some of the sort of dead wood that for some reason is starting as the season begins. But once again, this was not supposed to be a deep dive into the Warhawks of Louisiana Monroe. And I don't know how we got here, but I blame myself.
Yeah, you basically told the 5 gentlemen that represent Louisiana Monroe that they suck. I just want you to understand that, Bill.
Those 5 fans are going to be really upset.
Yeah, I don't think you can't only tell people it's not about the size of the dog in the fight; it's the size of the fight in the dog so many times. That is what you're trying to tell us.
Kate Peterson's on line 1.
Yeah, and he is not a happy camper.
once again, I am saying supportively, but measured also, that they will improve as the season goes along. Let's please talk about something else. So,
he doesn't want hate mail getting sent to him from Louisiana.
See, now I have to do a disclaimer on me, which occasionally I guess needs to be done. But the views, the thoughts, the feelings, actions, and words of one Bill Carroll only represent his own thoughts, feelings, views, and actions, and not Team MES Media as a whole, nor anyone else on the panel. So, moving on, I'm going to ask Will about the games that he has spotlighted in. We'll cheat and involve week 1 as well as week 0.
Well, if we're talking FCS versus FBS.
We'll them first, and then if you have another one.
Well, no, I mean, that's a perfectly good one to start with. It's not the number 1 FCS team in the country, which everyone's assuming is just reloading. And they do return a lot of seniors. They lost, some key guys, but they face Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State's one of those teams. They can beat the best teams in their conference, and they can also get blown out by inferior teams from outside the outside world. I feel like they're maybe I tend to think of teams like that as playing very emotionally, so they can get hyped up to play the great opponents, but they can't necessarily. They sometimes feel entitled and show up in other games. And this could definitely be a game where if you are Oklahoma State, I said the same thing about Colorado playing NDSU or Montana State going to New Mexico. If you show up and think we're badass, we can just show up and play our second string and beat this team. If you do that with South Dakota State, you are going to lose. They're another really well-run operation, and the talent level at that, those top programs in FCS, as previously mentioned, is as good as let's call it like a good group of 5 team. So I would say that's a really intriguing game for me. If they weren't, if this were last year's SDSU team where they were returning more skill guys that were the center of their offense, they had those wide receivers and tight end and running back that they all lost to the league. I'd feel like this is a game that I would actually pick South Dakota State in, but still intriguing nonetheless. I just feel like can they score enough points to keep up with Oklahoma State in this game? But it should be fun.
Yeah,
and I was just gonna say, just to remind everybody, last year Oklahoma State, despite going to the Big 12 championship game, lost to South Alabama.
Yep. About to say that
multiple teams, especially early last year during the season. It turns out I was doing some research about this, and in Stillwater, your football abilities is directly related to your blood alcohol content. So basically, if you are above a legal limit, you are going to play as elite. If you are sober, you lose. So load up on natty lights, and maybe that will take you to a national championship.
But wait, didn't they actually have a kid that was kicked off? I don't know. It was like, I think didn't they have somebody that had like a serious problem? Right. This is, you may be wiser on this subject than you.
So Ollie Gordon II, right? Favorite for the Doak Walker. Turns out, reason why he's so fast in his car and on the field, liquor. So,
Zach, you can leave and do another show, but you won't get this wherever you go, Zach.
You know why they got randomly blown out at a home by UCF last year? Turns out the liquor store got smashed up the day before, so Mike Gundy couldn't make his little pit stop over to the stadium. Yeah. So Brady is as real as their 1945 national championship in Stillwater.
I know Zach only has about 7 or so more minutes, so I want to make sure we ask him a couple more questions.
Yeah, ask a real legit question.
So, and we will come back to this because once again, we'll do the disclaimer after Zach is done about the words and thoughts and actions of one Brock Vieira. But first, back to Zach. Is it just me, or is the quarterback class at the FCS level down a little bit this year?
Yeah, I think that might be fair. Okay, so I will say this. I think Mark Gronowski could be a possible NFL prospect. I talked to a few scouts, and they really like his tape. The problem is South Dakota State hasn't played an FBS school in over a year. Remember his freshman year was Iowa. Then he set out the next season because of the spring injury. And then the next year they played Iowa. Last year they didn't play an FBS game, and this year they got Oklahoma State. So if he goes out and plays well against Oklahoma State, Mark Gronowski could be that guy. But he might be the only guy who has like true NFL potential, just because you see this trend of maybe like undersized quarterbacks being really good at this level. You know, Cam Miller could be a prospect. Everyone kind of knows how I feel about him. I don't see it in terms of like, I don't see the upside with Cam Miller right now. Maybe he changes my mind this year. Cole Gonzalez can spin it, man. I think he's, in terms of pure overall just throwing the football, Cole Gonzalez is the best in this subdivision, in my opinion.
Yep.
And the problem is I don't think he's big enough right now to be a true NFL prospect. So we'll see. But maybe, you know, with always does help when your dad is Billy Gonzalez at Florida and one of the top assistants in the nation. So we'll see. But I think when you look down, Tommy Malotte's not really an NFL prospect. Connor Watkins, not really an NFL prospect. So I think it just kind of depends on Mark Gronowski right now. And then maybe, you know, Cole Gonzalez sneaks in somehow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill,
And
it sounds like, yep. Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you know,
when you get in there. Get in there.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I actually think Gronowski, like you said, I totally hit the nail on the head. If you play your FBS opponent, despite all the tape that Mark Gronowski's put up in his career, if he goes to Oklahoma State and doesn't play well, then, you know, he's going to fall off the map. He'll be invited to somebody's camp or whatever. But if he plays well against Oklahoma State, I think he's setting himself up for a potential to get drafted. I don't think he'll be the first player out of FBS drafted, out of FCS drafted. But I do think there's, like you said, if he plays well in a high-profile game and does what he's been doing for, you know, the seasons that he's played, he's been really terrific in all of them. I think that will work out for him. Also, the thing to keep in mind is they may rely on him a little bit more this year than they have in the last couple of years because they don't have Isaiah Davis or Pierre Strong. So if that's the case and they're a little bit more quarterback centric, then he also might raise his profile a little bit. Matt Sluka from Holy Cross transferred to UNLV. He was a guy that I thought would have been my number 2 FCS quarterback as an NFL prospect. And I'm, you know, going to UNLV is a little like the coaching career of Bronco Mendenhall. Like, I'm not sure that's a big step up, but it's an opportunity for him to move to play some better opponents, which, you know, I'm just saying, it's not that UNLV is terrible, but it's like, did you want to stay and play for a good team at FCS, or do you want to go to a mediocre team at FCS?
They were in the Mountain West Championship last year.
Okay,
they were the greatest offensive coordinators in the country in Brendan Marion. They're one of the more premier non-Power 5 head coaches in Barry Odom. One of the more brilliant defensive.
Wait, I'm sorry. Brock is here. I forgot Brock is here.
Wide receiver prospect. Tiger Shakes is one of the best right tackles in all of I'm good. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
So I promise I will let you do a full UNLV rant. You could do a full Running Rebels rant in a moment. But I want to get 2 more questions to Brock.
Yes,
please. To Zach before he has to go. Okay, so the tight end class at the FCS level. Once again, some of those guys are smaller than everyone thinks, but I like a lot of the tight ends, and probably maybe only one of them has a legitimate shot to be drafted. But tell me what you think of the FCS tight end class.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talented guys. I just don't think there's a lot of NFL prospects. Like Cole Grossman's great, Carter Runyon, JJ Galbraith over at South Dakota, Joe Stoffel at North Dakota State. But in terms of just top prospects, man, I just don't see it. I think it's a talented group, but not for NFL.
There's that one giant kid. Is it Maine? Who's the kid I'm thinking of? He's huge. Like,
Mason
listed.
Gilbert.
Thank you. Right. And that's the one that Big Draft is high on, right? Because he's big. I mean, it's sometimes football can be simple. Okay. Wide receivers, running backs, and then I'm going to let you go because I know you got to go. So take me through what you think of the running back class and what you think of the wide receiver class, and then tell people where they can find your work and follow you, my friend Zach.
Yeah, just some names to know. Lamb Larison, legit UC Davis. Really like the kid at Montana State, even though he's not playing this weekend. Wide receiver, I'm really high on Darius Cooper at Tarleton State, who actually plays this weekend, man. So pay attention to him. I think the wide receiver class, man, that might be one of the deeper positions in FCS, I think. Running back Kayvon Britton, too, who also plays this weekend. Efton Chisholm for Eastern Washington is another one. So those would probably be the bigger names to watch. Also Amar Johnson, South Dakota State. I know they just had a kid drafted. I think Amar Johnson has just as much potential as Isaiah Davis did. I know that might sound crazy for people, but go watch the film. The kid's probably faster and more athletic than Isaiah Davis, which is terrifying to think about.
There's no probably about it.
I was trying to be nice to Isaiah Davis. I was trying to be nice to Isaiah Davis, man. But yeah, find us on social media, man. The Blue Bloods, the podcast. I think we're the Blue Bloods on all social media. FCS Football Central on SI is the website, si.com/college/FCS. And then my name is Zach McKinnell on all social media, man. But Bill, everybody, man, I appreciate you guys, man. It was a blast to be a part of this panel, man. We got to chop it up more throughout the season this year, Bill, man. We can't wait 6 months to make this happen.
I promise. I promise we're bringing you back and bring Huggy Bear with you. I know he's busy. But tell him, huge congratulations. I'm a huge fan of his work. Yeah. I think he's a little too high at Robert McDaniel, but I'm still a huge fan of his work. And yeah, give him a pound and a congratulations for me. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, ships at sea, planes flying overhead. If you're not following Zach McKinnell, get your life right.
I appreciate all you guys, man.
The Blue Bloods are as good as it gets, and the work you're doing for SI, while whatever, I have a whole other rant about the modern state of journalism I won't go into now. But thank you for being there, because if it weren't for what you're doing for them, I don't know what they'd have. But once again, it is great to have you on.
Appreciate you guys.
The best, and we love having you. We'll have you back again soon.
Yeah.
Absolutely, y'all have a great one.
Cheers.
Take care.
Woo! That man.
Hey,
I didn't realize how much I missed Zach until we had Zach.
What a great guest, man. You should, like I said, I'm humbled because this time of the year, man, that guy is locked and loaded, which is great. Yeah. But I'm I watch so much FCS football. I just got to get rolling in it a little bit and then see what's really happening this year, because like a famous football coach from my hometown likes to say, every year of football is different. Even if you return 80% of your team, it's a different team. It's a different year, and you just never quite know how it's going to go. So I'll have a good feeling for that. Two things that just because I was listening to all that great content. One is I got to spotlight a particular D3 player, and actually he's also a teammate of his, since we didn't really talk about D3. Nobody really needs to talk too much about D3, but there are two guys on this.
I need to talk about, but yes, go ahead.
There are two guys from Alma College. Brock points if you can tell me either their nickname or what state they're in.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm lost. Don't even try me. Don't even attempt to try me.
No,
they're not in Nevada.
I'm pretty sure I know this, because isn't Mary one of their rivals? Yeah. Okay. So I'm pretty sure I know this. So that's in the ODAC conference, right?
Well, they're in Michigan, Bill. They're very close to Saginaw.
That's
and their nickname is very interesting. The Scots.
Scots. Yep.
Yes, the Alma Scots. Don't ask why.
Wow.
But
I think it's because the founders isn't it because the founders of the school were Scottish Presbyterians? I'm guessing.
Could be. You got me. By the way, there are towns in the Midwest where English is not the first language. German is. Just like to say. So you never know.
There are even towns in the Midwest where Norwegian or Swedish is still the first language.
That's it, exactly.
We just talked about some of those guys in the Dakotas are from towns where you can still.
That's where it made me think of that.
You'll get a good lutefisk in some of those towns, my friend.
Well, that sounds like a operation you don't want to have.
Yeah, Brock, you do not want to have the lutefisk. Stay away. Just tell you. Well, in Iceland, the fish, they bury the fish for a year. And it's the reason they do this is because it's so full of urine that it's toxic if you try to eat it normally. So they put it in the ground and they let it ferment for a year. So it only turns into ammonia.
Yes,
and then you can eat it.
Yeah.
Right. Problem solved.
Like, who the hell thought of that first?
That's where you gentlemen get it wrong. I like my fish with extra piss.
So D3 Alma College wide receiver named Devin Frenchco, number 8. If you look at Alma tape, he led every level of football last year in the stat, 32.39 yards per reception.
Yep.
Which is no small thing. He's just, definitely a speed guy, but he's not tiny.
Right.
I think he's, like a sort of like 6 foot 200 guy.
Right.
He
He's
can
like
move.
197 pounds and like probably 6.5 feet.
Yeah.
And
So
I think he holds the school record for the 200 meters or something also.
Yeah, it's not elite. Like, for instance, Jason Bean ran faster than that. He was, like last year's benchmark for players in the draft who ran fast track. But he's very quick and very respectable. I think he was 5th in his college division in the 200 and maybe the 100.
Yeah, 200. Yeah, I think he holds the school record also in the at least one, if not both of those events.
Well, so Alma College has had 2 runners all time. So no, I'm just kidding. But the other guy there, I mean, Denver Fresco is definitely he's a big play guy. They didn't exactly have the quarterback to really exploit his talent. But if I'm following correctly, I think they have somebody that came in towards the end of last year or at the beginning of this year who's a little bit more of a thrower. So that should help him. But there's their possession receiver, in effect, big slot, is they call him a tight end. His name is Cole Thomas. He's like a 6'3", 220 or 225 guy. So he looks a little bit like one of those pass catching specialist tight ends. So I'm not sure if he's really a tight end or a wide receiver. It doesn't, the models don't really matter, but he's actually terrific as well. So if you get a chance to see Alma, they believe went pretty far in the D3 playoffs. They lost to the eventual champion last year. So I think if you follow D2, at least in the postseason, you might get a chance to see them play.
And the 2 D3 schools that I get to see at least once, sometimes twice a year, are St. Xavier out in the south suburbs and North Central. And North Central made a deep run also.
Yeah, North Central won. They won one of the last 2 years, did they not?
Yep.
So, yeah.
In a minor upset, they did. Usually it's one of the Wisconsins or and for a long time it was Mount Union for
that's
a
right.
nice
Mount
stretch of time. But yes, North Central has become one of the top programs. And first of all, they do a really good job of player development, which you sort of have to, I guess. But there's a lot of kids that are like fringe, sometimes even fringe FCS, but fringe D2 kids. But the schools that want them don't really understand what to do with them. And North Central does. And they tell them what the plan is. We're going to do this with you. We're going to do that. Here's how we're going to develop you. And some players are smart enough, even though it's quote unquote D3, are smart enough to say, you know what, I'm going to let you, I'm going to come here and, pay for school since there's no scholarships at that level. So you want to find a level where you don't have to question anyone's love of the game. It's D3, right? These guys are doing like every other college student is. They're working work-study jobs. They're trying to get scholarships and taking out loans. But I agree. You mentioned one of the players that I did really like when I looked at some D3 players as I got ready for the season. And for the most part, D3 doesn't get rated that much. And we talked about occasionally, a program at the FCS or D2 level, and even rarely, very rarely, but usually when a guy goes from D3 to FBS, he's walking off. No matter how good he was at the D3 level, they just don't tend to offer them scholarships. But there are a couple that I think are worthy and interesting to me in terms of the big issue, as we talk about, is just the simple stuff: height, weight, speed, right? If you are a true freak of nature and productive enough, you can get to an NFL camp as a D3 player. And then we talked about the power of the Senior Bowl. Once again, we've seen a couple, and when I say couple, I mean literally a couple, like 2, in the last decade or so. D3 players get invited. You want to go back farther. You got guys like Pierre Garçon to the Senior Bowl, and then if they absolutely positively blow everyone's doors off, it's like, oh, well, I'll be darned, right?
Yeah.
And when that happens, you get a chance. They actually give you a chance to actually, show people that you deserve the opportunity to not just play, but to be selected as a, be drafted, which isn't always the best if you're late drafted. Sometimes it's better, just in terms of your chances to make a team to sort of choose a team yourself. But either way, it's always a quote unquote honor to be drafted, and I'm interested to see, what ends up happening with some of these programs. Like I said, D3 for the most part has been maybe unharmed isn't the word I'm looking for, because all the stirrings and weirdnesses that have affected Group of Five so deeply, and FCS fairly much, even D2 to a slightly lesser extent, but a certain amount, has largely left D3 mostly alone. Once again, because of frankly the disinterest that most programs above them have, fairly or unfairly. But I do want to mention at least a couple more players at the D3 level. Then we can talk D2 a little bit, and then we can either talk back about what do you call that thing? Week 0 a little bit more, and then wrap, I guess, probably. But so the hardest position for me to scout at the D3 level, the two hardest for me are offensive tackle and like corners, right? Because if you are just pretty darn good, you look amazing sometimes, right? If you are a above average, let's say you're 6'5" and 290, and you're an above average athlete, you can end up looking like name a Jim Parker, name Larry Allen, like name a great offensive lineman of the past, just because you're up against, admittedly, like a lot of doctors of pharmacy and hedge fund managers. So
and enterprise managers,
right? Yes. So I get that it skews certain things, and then when you get a guy who's like 6 feet and 185 pounds and can run 4.4, and he's for some reason playing at D3, yeah, he looks like young Dale Carter, right? He ends up looking, young Champ Bailey, right? He looks like the greatest corner you've ever seen. So, as big a fan as I obviously am, I do try to build into my understanding, my thinking process that okay, Bill, calm down. Like, there's a reason this guy looks unbeatable. But there are some guys who I think do translate, to use the term. And you mentioned, like I said, already some of them. I'm going to give a couple other guys that I'm interested in seeing how they, quote unquote, project, translate, pick a turn. So when you are looking for a guy, first of all, do you show up every week, right? And are you amazing essentially every week without taking essentially any breaks? Are you amazing pretty much every week? If you are amazing pretty much every week, now I'm going to at least circle you and put something by you. And so there's a Cornell, but not the Cornell you're thinking, not Ezra Cornell, not the Cornell, speaking of, guess the what do you call it? Mascot game name, but the other Cornell. Trey Birdsong, who was not at Cornell University or at Cornell, the other Cornell in the Midwest Conference. First of all, he apparently though he's a smaller cat, he's 167, 160, he's in there with 60, and he's probably 5'8" and 5/8. But he ran a legit 4.48 apparently. Like, there's people who I trust who say he timed out at 4.48. And he did, believe it or not, grad transfer, right? Or maybe just regular transfer. So you rarely see that, but he's now at Illinois College, still D3, a slightly more prominent program. And so I'll get to see him because they do play North Central this year. So I hope they're coming to North Central. I have to go see if not, I may have to travel. But either way, I want to see him in person, so get eyes on him in person. But he was number 2. He was number 2 in D3 in all-purpose yardage last year. He rushed for 35 yards, had 967 yards in receiving, 747 yards in kickoff returns, and I think he might have had some. He also had 80 yards in punt. Not a big time punt return, but 80 yards in punt returns. So that's a total of 1,829 yards in all-purpose yardage last year in 10 games. So almost 200 all-purpose yards per game. Second only to Colin Burstein from Illinois College. Speaking of, from last year. So he's a guy I've sort of circled to sort of try to figure out. So I'll see him in person. One is is the 4.48 legit? Now, on a guy his size, 4.48 isn't mind-boggling, but still, if it is legit, if he's a legit even mid to high 4.4s guy, even though he's not the biggest cat in the world, it's the kind of thing that will help me to go to, go to bat for him with, Eric Galco at East West Shrine or my friends at College Gridiron Showcase or whatever. And the other D3 prospect that I've sort of circled, put stars and whatever around to try to see if he's the real deal. Like, is he something? Is he a player? So once again, pass rushers are another thing. I talk about tackles, and pass rushers are also difficult to evaluate simply because, once again, let's say you're 6'2", 240 pounds, and you run 4.66, and you are powerful, right? You're a powerful guy. You could end up looking, unstoppable. You could end up being just an absolute killing machine and putting up, 22 sacks in 10 games. Well, maybe it's an exaggeration, but being well above 10 sacks in 10 games, averaging a sack 0.6 per game and things like that. And once again, it's not until you get invited to an all-star game or something that we get sometimes a better chance. But another player that I've sort of circled, I want to see if they are real, is Brian Pritt. And once again, the big question is he at or near his actual size? He's at Benedictine, which is a solid program. And I got to see him a little bit in high school. He's actually a Chicago area kid. So we'll see, if it's for real. And they are the Eagles, for those who are still playing what's their mascot or whatever game. Benedictine is the Eagles. And they've had some great runs in the past. This is maybe not, they're the best of their best, but he's a really good athlete. He's a really good prospect, or he looks like a really good athlete. He looks like a really good prospect. And once again, he is listed at 6'2" and 240. He went to Notre Dame, not the college, but the high school. And he started his career at Augustana, which is where I first got to see him in college. And I actually saw him up against I can't remember who it was. I can't remember, but I saw him in person once while he was back at Augustana. And yeah, he was pretty darn good then. And he's just gotten stronger and more. Might have been not North Park. I can't remember who it was. But he had a really good game in that game. And I sort of put him on my radar. And then when we get to Benedictine, he kept getting better and better and better. So if he continues, and once again, is he legit 6'2", legit 240? Probably 6'1" and a quarter, probably 237. But either way, if he shows he's a good enough athlete that he can project to, say, play outside linebacker with an odd front team, he has a shot. So those are some of the D3 guys that I've sort of circled, and along with, and I'm agreeing also with the one you already mentioned. Brock, I know that you may not get a chance to dig that deep yet, at least. But is there a small schooler that you wanted to spotlight before we go back to just running through the rest of week 0?
No, I think you guys have pretty much covered everybody that I kind of have as a short list. I can't remember his name right now. That's the part that's kind of bugging me. But there's a tackle at Sacramento State that I'm very high on. Do you know who I'm talking about, Bill?
I think I do. In fact, for those of you, there we go. For those of you, I guess I should. For those of you who follow my little series of prospect videos on small school players or non-FBS or whatever term you want to use, players, I believe if it's who I think it is, then I believe I've done at least something of a video on this player.
Hey, he's got a good name for the last name for a tackle.
Well, I think Sacramento State has at least 2 players I've talked to.
Are you thinking Jackson Slater? Because that's who I'm thinking.
That's one of them, and he spells his first name somewhat unusually, right? It's J. How's it spelled again? It's J.
Nah, he's just a plain old Jackson.
Okay,
He look-
so
Yeah, he
what
looks
is it
a little bit like the guy that plays Thor.
right. Well, yes, right.
Yep.
But there's something about him that what was the thing about? There was something about him that I found funny or interesting, but I can't remember what it was now. But I know exactly what you're talking about. What was there was something about him that I talked about it. What was it? There was some cool little tidbit about him. I can't remember what it was now. But yes, things that he has going for him. Once again, he has that streak, as they call it, a little bit of a meanish streak in the way that he plays. And I hope that he tests well. He looks like he's going to test well. But if he does indeed test well, if he is at or near the size that he's listed, I think he has a very good, legitimate chance to actually be drafted. And that's, once again, I think the thing that bothers me is when I see players that were, not even starters at, South Carolina or whatever, guys who were valuable reserves at, Tennessee or whatever, getting drafted when they, no offense, but if you can't start in college, what's going to happen? What's the magic that's going to take place? But
that's the Channing Tinsdale dilemma. That's why I call it.
Right. Well, so all of a sudden, the term we sometimes hear is the light comes on. Oh, well, now the light comes on. I'm not saying that never happens because we've seen it occasionally. Jimmy Graham's a great example, right? Oh, yeah, Jimmy Graham went from being kind of a, fringe player in college and, had a great Hall of Very Good type NFL career. Okay, so let's finish off week 0 and then I'll give you back your lives. Week 0, of course, usually ends up being somewhat disappointing, but the good news is there are actually some good games, as was pointed out. Some of the FBS on FCS action is particularly interesting. But even once you get past that, and obviously I think that for me, the most fun thing is new faces in new places, which happens way more now than it used to. But I'm excited to see if some of these players, like if they weren't really like getting it done before, maybe I can now tell whose fault it was, right? It's like, oh, maybe it wasn't the coaching staff. Maybe it wasn't the surrounding talent because now you're in a new situation and you're still not quite. But some of the, well, you know what? I'll ask you first, Brock, and then we'll go around the group. What games and what particular matchups are you most excited about? And then run through some other things that you want people to know about week 0.
So definitely the ACC matchup, Florida State versus Georgia Tech, is a game that I am very intrigued in. There's 2 matchups that I'm very interested in, and that's going to be DJ Uiagalelei. Wow, that was horrible. I'm never doing that again. I just had a Jeff Barnes moment right there. I'm struggling, but basically, I want to see what he does in this new offense for Florida State. I've been very out on him. I didn't think he had that impressive of a tenure at Oregon State, and that's why I was very surprised that Florida State gave him a scholarship compared to all the rest of the quarterbacks available in the portal. So I'm very interested to see how he performs. But the other matchups that I'm very interested is going to be another Oregon State transfer. I think the premier Oregon State transfer, Sione Lolohea, how he does against Georgia Tech's offensive line. I think he's going to have himself a big day. And going back earlier to what Will and I were talking about, one of the corners that I had to kind of list down on my short list for Florida State, Fentrell Cypress, I think is a guy that we could see move up rapidly the draft boards, depending on how he plays, obviously, how he opens up the season. So that's matches I'm very interested in. Other ones, I want to see how SMU does against Nevada. I think they're going to stroll to an easy victory, but Jeff Choate is one of the more premier defensive-minded coaches in all of football. I think that he could potentially throw in some wrinkles that could mess up a Rhett Lashley offense, but I don't foresee any major issues for the Mustangs, but I think that it could be a game to keep an eye on. Lastly, one of the players that I had an opportunity to speak to at Mountain West Media Day, I'm very interested to see what he does in his career, is wide receiver at New Mexico, Luke Weiler, I believe. I apologize to him if I mispronounced his last name, but very short, one of those blue collar kind of players. But he's a guy that I when I look at the film, I mean, when he has the ball in his hands, he just wants to get as much yards as he can. I think against a FCS opponent like Montana State, I think he can do some special things and maybe set the tone for them this season. So those are kind of the things that I'm keeping an eye out on during week 0. And of course, Hawaii football is back. 40.5-point favorites against Delaware State. Run and shoot is back fully, so we're going to see the ball getting thrown a lot. Obviously, Braden Shager, quarterback, is a guy you got to keep an eye out on. Pefele Ashlock, wide receiver, is a guy that I think is going to have a monster day for the Rainbow Warriors. And I'm very interested to see what does the defense for Hawaii look like, because that's been an Achilles thorn in their side for several years now. So those are the things, again, I'll be looking forward to watching tomorrow. Finally, college football is back. It's been too long, and I've been deprived. And I am a happy, happy boy.
Same question for you, Will. I know you've sort of answered it, but is it?
Yeah, I talked a little bit earlier about Georgia Tech and Florida State. Just to hit on that again, cannot be overstated. The Florida State offensive line, they're like, it's all seniors and redshirt seniors, but particularly the middle. Maurice Smith, who's playing center for them, I think played guard before, and Keandre Jones especially. There's a cat that I think is. Those are two of the best interior linemen that are going to be in the draft this year. So that they have you look at their lineup right now. It just feels like this is the sort of, you can see maybe why they brought DJ in. I not my favorite quarterback, but I feel like it's the year that last sort of the end of this window with the talent that they had and lost. This is sort of the tail end of that before they regroup a little bit. So I expect this to not really be such a close game. I know everybody's sort of hot on Georgia Tech and their offense from last year, but I sort of think Florida State is still the class of that conference. And then the other game I talked about before just was the Montana State at New Mexico. I'll just flat out say it. I will take Montana State to win a game that they're 14-point underdog. So if you want to go to DraftKings and make a bet for me, please remember me when you win.
Montana State's the favorite by 14.
Oh wait, they are now the favorite?
Oh yeah, they've been the favorite the whole time.
Actually, when
they're gonna trample Bronco is what the bookies are saying.
Yeah, because I saw something where they were I remember the exact quote. It was that New Mexico may not be favored the rest of the year, but they're like meaning they're favored not this week, but not the rest of the year. So interesting. Then in that case, 14. Yeah, I still take the give the 14. I'm still your bookie's best friend. That's a little scarier, but yeah, I'll take that. And I'll take. I might take North Dakota State in the points. That's a more dangerous bet, but I like that one. I'll give you a week 1 game. I don't think it's unlikely that I'm going to be with you next week. So I love this. Some of the quarterback movements were really interesting to me. The portal quarterbacks, there were some really good ones. Not the game I'm going to talk about, but TJ Finley left Texas State for some reason and went to Western Kentucky. But the thing about that is, I think everybody who plays quarterback at Western Kentucky looks pretty good by the time their tenure is over. And it's still got some guys to throw to there. That'll be interesting. But Cam Ward, I felt was a quarterback that the NIL deal in Miami must have been out of this world because, yeah, they're a top 25 team, but I think, Ohio State was interested in taking him. And I feel like, that's a quarterback that could win a national championship if he went to Ohio State. Anyway, Miami starts their season with Florida, which is no small feat. So it's going to be really interesting to see Cameron Ward. There was talk of him going to Mississippi last year and Ohio State this year. He's now going to play with the big boys week 1. That's a really intriguing matchup for me in the terms of the quarterback hierarchy for this draft year. I actually really love a lot of quarterbacks that are sort of just below the radar of, as you like to say, Bill, big draft. But that's right now, to me, Cameron Ward is the number 1 quarterback in the class. And, he's got a make or break year where he's got a chance to prove that what he's done at his 2 previous stops is something he can replicate in the SEC. And if he does, I suspect he'll be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, that NIL package better have been worth it because he signed up to be coached by the destroyer of quarterbacks, Mario Cristobal, which is a very bold decision for
Yep.
Ward. I mean, he does have Isaiah Restrepo, who I am a huge fan of. So he
Yeah, me
does
too.
have that at his disposal. But still, I actually have Florida winning that week 1 matchup just for everyone watching. Another guy that I kind of want to touch on real quick, just from the quarterback situation, just who I think is going to be one of those not talked about names that is going to rise. I want to get your thoughts on him, Will. Is Noah Fafita out of Arizona. I think that he's going to put up some ridiculous numbers this year. And what do you guys think?
Well, I mean, who was the earlier quarterback we talked about from FCS who's undersized, and there was a question of like, is he big enough for the league? He's bigger than Noah Fafita, so I mean that's the first problem.
Yeah.
But I mean, what's not to like about Fafita's play? I mean, shoot, he's, if he were 3 inches taller, and 10 pounds heavier, there would be no doubt that he would be the best underclassman. Looking forward to the draft. At his size, it just reduces the number of quarterbacks who have ever been really successful at that kind of size. But his anticipation skills and accuracy and the arm talent, all together, it's not like he has a weak-armed small guy. He's just undersized. And of course, the knock on him will be he's throwing to the best wide receiver in football. And, that's fine, but it's a two-way street. You make that guy look good by how you deliver the ball to him. And I think they raise the level of play for each other. So I really like him. I just feel like he's, in a way, I kind of feel like the same. Well, I'll make this thing about Taylor. I'll talk about Taylor Green at Arkansas in a second because it's a similar vibe. If Bryce Young suddenly looks like an NFL quarterback this year, then the market for Noah Fafita goes way up.
Yes.
If Bryce Young looks as bad as he did last year, then it's going to be hard for people to argue, well, this little guy's going to come in and play. Well, we saw what that looks like in Carolina, so on and so forth, right? And to me, Taylor Green is his career, his prospects for the draft hinge upon the Anthony Richardson, in Indy, because he's another big guy who can run and has all the tools and arm talent in the world and is even faster than, maybe a better runner than Anthony Richardson. But if Anthony Richardson crashes and burns, then it's like, well, we have Josh Allen, but we don't really have like the guy that was a top 5 pick to seal his fate. So yeah, I feel like these draft prospects for quarterbacks, they get boxed into, pigeonholed into a comparison to someone that they're a little bit like, either similar school, similar size, similar game, and then their prospects are really tied to what happened to the last guy that looked like that, because it's a make or break thing for your job when you're a GM in the NFL and you're generally playing it safe and not going with guys who are outliers one way or the other, which I think is a failure. But I also don't have to keep my job if I miss. But I think your chances of finding a good quarterback prospect for the NFL are a lot better if you do not care. You take home run swings and you don't care if you swing and miss. But easy for me to say because it's not my job.
Yeah, could not agree more with you. And for everyone wondering about TJ Finley, I mean, obviously Austin Reed and Zappy make up those Western Kentucky quarterbacks that have done a phenomenal job in college and have gotten their opportunities in the NFL. Texas State losing him was a pure product of J.J. Kinney somehow, like, being I don't even know what the right word for it is. I mean, he had a great quarterback in Finley for his system there. They had phenomenal success. I was hyping him up as a coach the whole time. They go after Jalen DeLaura. Obviously, his off-the-field stuff becomes not only, like, revisited but prevalent. DeLaura is no longer playing football, or at least at the college level anymore. Finley's gone. Very interested to see how that transition is affecting Finley and how he goes about his career. Another kind of thing that I think we should be watching out for during obviously week 0 and week 1 is going to be how does these transfer quarterbacks adjust to these new systems compared to maybe a quarterback we don't have at the same skill level but have been in their systems for maybe 1 or 2 more years. I think is a big thing. Last quarterback I want to touch on before we get out of here as one of the guys that I think is going to have a surprisingly huge year, Max Brosmer up in Minnesota, obviously FCS transfer. Yeah, I think that he was number 1 FCS quarterback transfer in. I think Daniel Jackson, if he can stay healthy, is going to be one of the premier talents for him. And I think that they can do some very special things with the Golden Gophers, especially since North Carolina now has to travel from Chapel Hill to Minneapolis to go play them. So I think that's going to be another win in their total and get them back, to the level that we're accustomed to in the PJ Fleck era.
Yeah,
that's a good one. I mean, there's just so many guys that have moved or are in better situations than they have been before, who I'm really looking forward to. I mean, I'll lay my hat on Taylor Green. There's a guy that, he lit it up at spring practice at Arkansas. Mm-hmm. I just don't think Arkansas, you never know. Who knows with them? Were they just a pretty good team who had terrible quarterback play, or quarterback play that was so up and down and turnover prone that it didn't work for them the last couple of years? I don't know. A lot of people really like that guy, but I have a feeling that Taylor Green suits a team like that, where he can play a little bit more hero ball and not get yanked. And where the thing at Boise was, his coach that got fired last year, I think, was ultra conservative with how he wanted the quarterbacks to play, and really mismanaged that situation into getting himself fired. But I feel like Taylor Green has the most talent at quarterback, maybe of anybody that raw talent and physical tools, but that doesn't, as we know, always translate into good quarterback play. And Arkansas is not traditionally a place where you go to produce quarterbacks, right? So like we were saying with Western Kentucky, it feels like they make the most of the guys that they've had. I'm not sure that you could say the same about Arkansas.
Yeah, could I agree with you more on that statement or on Green? KJ Jefferson this year went to UCF, and people are very high on him and Gus Malzahn in that program. I actually had the complete opposite take. I think UCF is a dumpster fire under Malzahn, and I think that Jefferson is going to struggle to have success this year in the Big 12, despite it being a more pass-happy league. I think Green is a guy, especially in Bobby Petrino's offense, you're going to see a lot of good things with. Man, I think is that everybody already, Bill?
I don't know. I want to feel like I need to have. I have like 30. Let me see. I'll tell you exactly. I think I have 35 guys in my quarterback prospect list. Let's see. I have 36, and we mentioned 2 or 3 more tonight that I didn't have on there. So I feel like I need a stock report every week during the season. For where they are starting the season and who's moving up and who's moving down. Because I just feel like there's a lot of variability with it, since the big names, the prospects are not all at big schools. Because if you have your 3 best prospects and they're at Texas and Georgia and Alabama, they're locked in. They're not really going up and down very much. But the way these guys have moved around now, and I feel like they're all starting the year with the possibility of jumping way up in the draft or becoming undrafted players, and it's going to depend a lot on what happens this season. But good guys moved around. There's some good quarterbacks out there. So for those of you, quarterback situation for 2025 is terrible. You got to pay more attention.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to touch on that. I know we talked about it on Twitter. People that are saying that this is a quarterback lacking class, you got to watch film. A lot of great passes in the football. Just because the names aren't out there, the statistics aren't great. You guys are talking about guys that have great traits, great execution, great fundamentals, and are going to excel when they get put into an NFL level offense.
Yeah,
agreed.
I'm trying. Where did Van Dyke, when he left Miami, where did he land? Wisconsin. My God, Wisconsin. There's a place that's been trying to figure the quarterback thing out for a minute.
Yeah. How about they figure out that they're in Wisconsin and stop trying to run the ball out of shotgun and ruin Braylon Allen's collegiate career? How about they do that for once in their life? Jesus Christmas. You do realize you can put a quarterback under the center in college, right? It's not illegal.
Hey, Grayson McCall. We're going to see Grayson McCall in a normal offense. In a big conference. And I feel like the hidden thing with him was that he had the shoulder surgery on his throwing arm. And so 2 years ago, he really had trouble throwing it. Last year, it looked like he was the year after surgery, where you can play, but you're not necessarily at 100%. But I did think towards the end of the time last year, he started to see his old arm velocity come back. So if he's truly healthy and his shoulder is what it was before the injury, and he's playing in a big school, he's another guy that can make a jump. Not the youngest guy anymore, but he has talent. He's a guy that probably could come in and be a number 2 in the NFL, and come into a game in preseason and totally not embarrass himself with any team. So I feel like there's a role for those guys in the league for sure. And he may be better than that. He has upside, but it's like it's going to be a real change for him to be in a different place, in a different system, and we're going to learn something about him.
And I believe Robert and I is still the offense coordinator at NC State, and obviously we don't have to discuss it. Bill and I have been huge on him for a long time as a coordinator, so McCall should put up some massive numbers for the
I hope
Wolfpack.
so. That's what I was thinking about TJ Finley as well. I like those two situations a lot, so I'm very curious to see how that works out. Yeah. Dalvin's, by the way, hidden gem for Western Kentucky is Dalvin Smith. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but the other guy from Western Kentucky got drafted last year, and everybody thought that was, their big loss with their best wide receiver. But I feel like Dalvin Smith.
Malachi Corley.
Yeah, Malachi Corley, who's a great player, but I feel like Dalvin Smith was is going to have a bigger year than that even this year. So
he's better at working down the field, and Corley, people fell in love with him. You talked about the power of comparisons. People kept. If I had a dime for every time somebody compared him to Deebo Samuel, I would at least be able to get myself a solid, not too roughly used, like Lexus ES 400.
Yeah,
probably from maybe 8-9 years ago. But the point is that it is fun to compare players. It's cool. It's shorthand. But these are two very distinctly different players who played in different systems, and it's not fair to really either of them, blah, blah, blah. But here's I want to hit on sort of one last thing, and then maybe we can hit our closing thoughts, and then you can have your lives back. So there will be, of course, the massive overreaction to whatever happens, right? That's what happens. So we will overreact to something that happens week one.
Vividly.
Right. SMU gets blown out by Nevada or whatever, or something unexpected happens.
I'm calling for someone's head if that happens.
Well, okay. But see, that's what I mean. That is a classic overreaction.
Yes.
What if they then right the ship and then only lose 2 more games the whole season? And
they could Mike Gundy it. Like that, you never know.
So, right. The point is that there'll be something that will happen. So I'm going to give you each a chance to sort of call your shot about some surprising, unexpected thing that'll be overreacted, to which people will overreact after just not even a whole week, a partial week of college football. Will, pick your favorite thing you think people will overreact to after week 0.
Oh, well, with just a week 0, that Florida State
throw in week 1 too, if you.
Yeah, no, that Florida State should have been invited to the national championship last year, and they're going to go undefeated.
Oh wow!
Ooh,
okay,
I like that. I like that a lot.
Right, because I think they're a tremendous team. So I just feel like they're going to look great, and people are going to be like, "Why didn't we have them last year?" Blah blah blah. So
yeah, that's gonna ruffle some feathers for sure. I like that a lot.
Okay, go Brock.
I will have to say, regardless of who wins the Miami and Florida matchup, both head coaches will not be fired after the season. Will actually be retained. Yes, I think they both do just enough. Florida has a gauntlet of a schedule, but I think they beat Miami. I think that's going to be actually good enough for him to actually for Napier to get 1 more year at Florida. So I'm going to say, regardless of the week 1, whatever the result is, Cristobal and Napier will be back in 2025.
Well, they're not going to win that game because this is Cam Ward. This is going to have his Doug Flutie year in the ACC.
See, the problem is Cristobal doesn't exactly know what the term QB kneel means. So if you don't know what that means, how can I trust you to win?
By the way, Matt Lee, his center, who was the one that was caught on the bench going like, "What are we doing?" Yeah. That cat played yesterday. I saw him a little bit. Looked pretty good. Yeah. Anyway, no, you're right that Cristobal is not that great a coach, but I feel like when you have this is why I say the Doug Flutie year. When you have a transcendent quarterback, it can make even a bad coach look like a genius.
Shout out wherever he is to Jim. Shout out to Jimbo Fisher wherever he is. So
I'm just saying Miami looked better than Manny Diaz than it did ever under the Mario.
Right. I love both of those options, particularly because my co-host, for those who aren't familiar, the Babyface Assassin, he got that nickname because his other street name is Young Coach Killer. Generally, he's out here just firing coaches into the sun. So imagine my surprise when he predicted that 2 coaches would be retained.
Wow.
it is truly, you are a new man. You are a different person.
No, I'm not. I want to clarify my statement. I think they will. I don't agree with the decision, but I think they will. So I want to let everybody know I have not changed at all. I have not improved. I've meditated and realized that the problem is me, but I'm not going to fix it. We will be firing a lot of coaches hypothetically.
Okay,
this
good.
season.
Good.
Buckle
so
up,
we're going to
people.
bring back this because that's usually we won't do it for week 0, but after week 0 and we preview week 1, we'll bring back the segment where Brock fires a coach. So that will be back. And
it'll probably be Mario Cristobal.
He's definitely in the top 5 of guys that are probably going to get, a verbal barrage of insults from yours truly here at the College Football Forecast.
Yes.
Make mine James Franklin.
Oh,
I like that. I like that. There's no reason Penn State should have like any type of issue this year winning football games. That team is way too good for him not to like win.
Let's have this conversation in 3 weeks when they look like they forgot how to play football.
Hey, it could happen. I'm just saying you have another year of new coordinators, so at the end of the day, they can't get it done. Who's the guy hiring them?
No, there's a guy. There's a coach that can make any quarterback look bad. So
true.
He's doing it right now.
I have been previously a James Franklin defender. However, I am running out of gusto and energy for that. So this is the year.
Mike Tomlin is next, Bill. You'll get there eventually, Bill.
Well, the show is taking a turn, and so I will take this moment to throw out maybe 1 or 2 things and get out of here before something truly unpleasant happens. So, one, as I said, things that I think will be to which I think people will overreact. I think there'll be at least one defensive player. Let me see if I can pick one who will have an off the charts. You know what? I'll just go with Travis Hunter. Why not? I think Travis Hunter, despite the fact that he's probably, we keep saying, I think he's a better wide receiver. Watch for him to do something ludicrously amazing on defense. Make one of those, how do you do that picks where he jumps up, reaches sort of with the wrong arm around the receiver, backhands the ball, takes it down and starts running away with the like, right? And then it's like, I've seen the greatest cornerback prospect in the history of college football. And Hunter for Heisman. And, name something, right? Name something that people can overreact to.
Number 1 pick.
Right. That too. Yeah, he grabs the ball, takes it back. If some ridiculous pick, runs it back for a touchdown. And it's like, I've just seen the greatest athlete to play college football ever. So I think that at least there'll be a certain amount of hyperventilation about whatever Travis Hunter does. Or if he ever has a bad game, there'll be also a great amount of incredible overreaction to that too. In fact, anything that Travis Hunter does this season, there'll be an overreaction to it. So I don't know if they have a line on that in Vegas or whatever on, you could bet the over or under on overreaction to a player, but bet the over would be if you can, on overreactions to Travis Hunter. And it starts right out of the box on week 0.
Yes.
Hey, by the way, if just quickly, if North Dakota State beats Colorado, there will be no Twitter or X, so you might find another social media platform because it's going to explode in a way that it may never have previously.
So
it'll make Trump look like like nothing happened.
Yeah. So will Colorado players be forced to say Allahu Akbar every time they score a touchdown, or like God willing, or Takbir, considering the new NIL deal out in Saudi Arabia? Like what was that about?
A crazy story, man.
Yeah, that's wild, but not as wild as this take for overreaction Friday or whatever we call it. My overreaction take is that I believe that, and now I'm not so sure I want to say it anymore, but I'm still gonna say
it. Boy, oh God,
that's when you know it's a good take.
Nico Iamale Ava, quarterback out of Tennessee, will be your 2024 Heisman winner.
Wow. Oh, that is your hottest take of all time. And you've had some smoky, blazing hot takes. That's wow.
Wow,
I wasn't
indeed.
sure he's going to finish the season at Tennessee, but you say he's going to win the Heisman. Okay, cool.
I think Heupel's fast offense will protect him.
Oh, okay.
Do you,
I think
do you
he's going to
know-
ball out quick, and they're going to put out some numbers.
But Tennessee might be the most dysfunctional offense in college football. So if he wins the Heisman there, he really will deserve it.
That's why. That's literally exactly the whole thesis behind my point. People are going to be so perturbed. Brew McCoy and Scrollway are putting up 1,500 yards each.
Maybe it'll be Matt Sluka at UNLV if he can overcome being in Vegas.
What? Being part of one of the fastest growing programs in all college football? Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine.
So we will have to do a point counterpoint on UNLV football, just the two of you. I'll go get a sandwich. But we will not do that tonight, though, because this is originally projected as a 1 hour show. It's really more of a 2 hour show. Live with it. But we gave you so much good stuff.
Yes.
Zach McKinnell laid it down flat. I mean, if you weren't picking up what he was putting down, you need Velcro, right? Because he was laying it out for you. If you say to yourself, I feel so behind, I'm not sure, all you got to do is listen, watch, read. If it's got Zach McKinnell's name associated with it, you will be a smarter, better person and a smarter, better football fan once you're done having it just take it in, right? Just let it happen. Yes. And then speaking of accidentals in, right? We have the actual accidentals. Then we have Wil Massasack. And while Wil, the train is just pulling out of the station for Wil, but guess what? Once it gets rolling down the tracks, woo, right? Wil's going to get it going. And when we bring him back in like late November or whatever, he's going to know everything about everybody. And you'll be like, oh my God, what happened? And is it stem cell treatment? Probably not. No, he's just been watching a lot of football. And then, of course, my always amazing co-host, a.k.a. the Babyface Assassin, a.k.a. Young Coach Killa. I promise he'll be back to his Coach Killing ways just 1 week from today. Once again, on behalf of Team MBS Media, I want to thank Zach McKinnell, and I will reach out to him on Twitter as well. I want to thank Wil Massasack. Wil, also tell people where they can find your work and follow you, and hey, your multi-hyphenate stuff as well. If people are interested in finding out what you're doing in your real life, you can tell them about that also.
Yeah, I'm first of all always at Steeler Fury for football and draft coverage, and Accidental Zen at Twitter. You can find me in being an old curmudgeon about most things. And as far as my real life stuff, I am working on a lot of developing movies and television shows. I'm doing a long series of year-long filming for an indigenous family. It's their Lakota, Oglala Lakota family, supposedly speaking family. And we've been doing a lot of little films for them. I don't know. I would like to be better on other platforms talking about that stuff. So maybe someday you'll see me on Instagram, and I will do a little bit more promoting those things. But yeah, there's always stuff. I'm working on, international intrigue, trying to raise money. If anybody would like to, pay me to do brilliant things in the creative world, I'm always here at Accidental Zen on Twitter and on Bill's show.
Yes, there too. And Brock, do you have articles or other stuff you're about to drop, stuff you're working on?
Yeah, so basically I'll be dropping my work with Jeff Barnes. We'll be doing my top 20 draftable SEC prospects will be dropping soon. I got a piece about Arizona coming out. I got a piece about Hawaii coming out soon. A whole bunch of things happen with Team MBS Media, obviously, with this show. And then obviously you can also, if you're a fan of the Los Angeles Rams, please follow my work at Rams Wire. I'm always producing content for them as well. And, draft season's around the corner. This is where I start to really gear up my scouting. And so hopefully in about 10 or so weeks, I'll have a better picture of what Florida State's best draftable prospects will look like for you guys.
Excellent. Well, once again, everyone, it has been amazing, incredible. Thank you so much for spending about twice as much time as we originally planned with us. But we had so much good stuff. I couldn't stop. But once again, thank you once again. And we are OUT out. See you again in 1 week.